everyone, welcome back to another episode of Speak Easy English. I hope you're all doing great today and that your brain is in English mode, ready to practice your listening skills. I'm Lisa, and I'm always here with my wonderful co-host, Tommy.
Hi to all English learners. I'm Tommy. That's right. Today, we have a really interesting and relevant topic, one that I'm sure many of you can relate to. We're going to talk about why it feels so difficult to move from an intermediate level to an advanced level in English, or in any language, really.
Exactly. If you're learning English, you've probably noticed that at the beginner stage, you feel like you're learning a lot very quickly. But once you reach an intermediate level, that progress seems to slow down. Have you ever wondered why?
Yeah, it's something that happens to most language learners. So today, we're going to break it down, explain why this happens, and give you some tips on how to push through this stage and keep improving.
Before we dive in, don't forget to share this podcast with your friends and family. Learning is more fun together. Now let's get started. Why does it feel so challenging to move from intermediate to advanced in English?
Well, there are several reasons, but the biggest one, in my opinion, has to do with word frequency. When you're a beginner, you're exposed to the most common words in English over and over again. Words like the, and because appear constantly in speech and writing, so you pick them up quickly.
Exactly. You can't really make sentences without these words, so you learn them naturally just by listening and reading. And that's why beginners feel like they're making fast progress, because they're seeing the same words again and again.
But once you reach an intermediate level, you already know those common words. The new words you encounter are much less frequent. Take the word frame, for example. You know, the thing you put a picture in to hang on the wall. It's a common object. But do you hear that word every day? Probably not. Maybe once a month, if that.
Right. So when you see a new word like frame, you might try to memorize it, but then you don't see it again for weeks or months. By the time you do, you've probably forgotten it, and that's frustrating.
I know that feeling. You recognize a word, but you can't quite remember what it means. That's because it hasn't been repeated enough times for it to stick in your memory the way words like and or because have.
This is why it feels like your progress slows down at the intermediate stage. You are still learning, but because new words appear less frequently, it doesn't feel like you're improving as fast as before.
And here's an interesting fact. Studies suggest that the 100 most common words in English make up about 50% of all written text. That means the thousands of other words in the language only account for the remaining 50%.
That's crazy when you think about it. It really shows why learning new words at this stage takes so much more effort. But don't worry, we have some tips to help you keep progressing.
That's right. We have 4 suggestions for you. The first one is simple, but not necessarily fun. Spend more time practicing English. The more you listen, read, and have conversations, the more exposure you'll get to those less common words.
For example, I have a student who listens to English for 4 hours a day, 3 hours of active listening and 1 hour of passive listening while doing other tasks. Because he listens so much, even the less common words appear more frequently for him, which helps him learn them faster.
Yeah, most of us can't dedicate 4 hours a day to listening, but even increasing your listening time a little can make a difference.
The second tip is to use spaced repetition. There are apps like Anki that help you review words at just the right time, right before you're about to forget them. This method is backed by science and can be really effective.
That's a great one. The third tip is simple. Repetition. Listen to the same content multiple times. For example, you could listen to this podcast episode 3, 4, or even 5 times. The more you hear new words, the more they'll stick.
And the fourth tip is to focus on specific topics for a while. If you listen to content about the same subject, like business, travel, or cooking, you'll hear the same specialized vocabulary over and over again, which helps reinforce it.
That's a great strategy. You can also follow the same podcaster or YouTuber for a while because everyone has their own speaking style and tends to repeat certain words and phrases.
Absolutely. So, to recap, spend more time practicing, use spaced repetition, repeat content multiple times, and focus on specific topics. These methods can help you overcome the intermediate plateau and keep improving.
And most importantly, don't get discouraged. Progress might feel slow, but as long as you keep practicing, you are improving.
That's right. Keep going, and one day you'll realize just how much progress you've made. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with your friends, and we'll see you next time on Speak Easy English.